to give you a little bit of background of who I am, which you may or may not know, I went to 12 years of Catholic school. My first teaching job was as an 8th grade teacher at St. Eleanor's Parish School in Collegeville, Pennsylvania, not too much unlike St. Paul's here. From there, I became a theology teacher at Archbishop Carroll High School in Washington, D.C. And I tell you that just to give you a little bit of background that my personal faith has played not only a role in my personal life, but in my professional one as well. I'm going to give you a couple of examples that I hope illustrate for me where my faith meets my work life. I'll give you 2 quick examples. Have some students at Maine South and the pleasure of working with young people as their enthusiasm for their ideals. Not necessarily money, not necessarily fame or acceptance, but they're very idealistic. And one student, who was an Eagle Scout, which is a very noble pursuit as well, got involved with doing some community service. And that community service led him to create community gardens. And in getting to know this young man, I got to know how involved he was in the Maine South community. We got to talking and working together. And as a result of that, he really wanted to give back to Maine South. And the way that he's looking to give back to Maine South is to create a native community garden at Maine South. Okay, well that's great. That's a nice initiative. So how do you fit into that mix? One more thing. Another student this year started something you might be familiar with, which is Hawks Touchdowns for Charity. And that young man came to me with an idea of how can we get some pledges for the number of touchdowns that the football team might score so that we can raise money and give to the organization Have Dreams. 2 great noble efforts and examples of many, many more. I could spend an hour telling you about all the great things that our kids do at Maine South. So that is 2 small examples. But for me, what that exemplifies is really what I see as the mission of schools, public, private, what have you, which is really helping students develop their talents, their God-given talents. Because I think we see the face of God in other people and in the work that they do. And when we can help to cultivate the talents of young people, support them. I didn't do really much more than look for ways to say yes to those individuals so that they could continue to be fulfilled by the service that they gave back to the community. And I think that's really the mission of schools. It's my personal mission as principal of a high school, is to find ways to say yes, to help students discover their talents, develop them, and then remind them, hopefully by the way that I interact with them, that our teachers interact with them, and that the values we send at the school, that you've been blessed. You've been blessed with an ability, and everyone's ability is different. And when you discover that, and you thank God for that, you have an obligation now. And that obligation is to give back through service to others. And I think those 2 little stories are just snippets of what happens every day in the hallways at Maine South to some degree. Students using whatever that might be, an individual talent to help another student, their personality, a hello, a smile, being a good person, to give back to that community, to make Maine South the kind of place that you want to be. And so my role for me is really that service element. I view my job as service. Service to Maine South, service to Park Ridge, Harwood Heights, all the other communities that we serve as a high school. And hopefully, by helping others cultivate their talents, I'm helping them find their way in the world. I'm helping them find the gift that God has given them and an outlet for sharing that with everyone. And through that, honestly, seeing God in others and seeing God at work. Now with that, so Jeff asked me for some tips, right? So what are tips, or what are sort of things that I would say to people in the community or parents? How do you support that? Help children and others find their way in the world. Expose them to all that you can expose them to. Help them find the things that they're interested in and find that spark within themselves that really can help them grow, flourish, and become the people that God wants them to be. That looks a lot of different ways, but I think when we work in partnership that way, we are really helping raise children together. And if you can help people find that, you're producing really giving people who care about others, who have extreme empathy. And I remind you to have empathy for those young people as well. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to test us. But that's part of growing up. And that's part of us helping them work through life and remind them of their responsibility. Remind them to be people who are accountable for what they do, what they've been given. And from there, really make their mark on the world. So I don't know if my 6 minutes on that end are up or not. But I'd be happy to answer any questions or engage in that conversation with you if you have anything. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
Are the students, say, encouraged to get into projects outside of the high school or into the community?
We try to, and we're looking for more ways to do that. So, for example, students came with the idea of how can we help the tornado victims from last weekend. And so emails went out today, and we'll continue to go out through the weekend, and we'll be collecting things for those victims of the tornado. And then hopefully the idea is that next Wednesday we'll drive a U-Haul down of supplies down to Coal City and help those who are less fortunate than us. And really just by the grace of God aren't us. It could easily have been us, right? And so trying to send that message to students, there's a lot of ways that we can give back. It doesn't have to be a long period of time. We'll get this done in about 3 or 4 days and really give back to the community. Yes?
I was going to ask about your leadership when it comes to children when they come to you with these ideas. How do you encourage them to bring those ideas to life? Do you steer them in any way?
Well, it's really trying, how can we find ways to say yes? Since kind of the buck stops with me, it's, I could easily say no, or that's too much work, or you're not organized enough. But what I've always encouraged my staff to do is how do we work with students to find out how can we say yes to this? It's an idea, it's a good idea. You have maybe a seed, or maybe you haven't fully fleshed out, but how do we move that forward for you? And that's really the message that I know my assistant principal, who's new with us this year, but not new to the district, he and I really share that philosophy. And I think you'd have to ask our students, but I think this year we've really gained some traction with things happening in the building and really taken some steps forward. And I really believe that has a lot to do with the fact that looking for ways to say yes.
When you're facing challenges, and I know you face challenges, when you're facing challenges, do you have any special devotions or any prayers or anything, any way of that you deal with the topic?
I'm in Mass on Fridays for a reason. Personally what I do is I do pray simply to help me make good decisions, that I'm making the right decisions, and that I have the strength to carry that conviction through. In the prayer that we started with, it talks there's a little mention of sort of that, keeping that moral center to your decision making. And to be very honest, in a position like a high school principal, you're not challenged with necessarily immorality, but you are challenged on right and wrong very often. And keeping that sort of center of what's right for the student, what's right for our community when you make those decisions, and then carrying that out in the face of sometimes great opposition. And so for me, Friday mornings, I'm kind of clearing my head and ending my week on a high note, and praying for the strength to use my talents, to put really faith in God and faith in my own ability. Because I think sometimes you do, from the outside, you're often challenged, which causes you to be self-reflective and ask about your own maybe course of action. And I think that's a good thing, to be self-reflective, and it's one of the things that I want all of our kids to be. But at the same time, you try and bring yourself back around to what is that, again, kind of coming back to what your faith is, what is your core, and making decisions for kids and families that reflect that. And trying to always make sure that you're doing what you feel is the right decision.
My last question is, A job can be a responsibility, and it can also be cause a person to grow. So is this the first time that you've been a principal of a high school?
It is the first time that I've been a lead principal of a high school. I spent some time as an assistant principal at a very large comprehensive high school back east where I'm from. And I think it is always a growth experience. You're faced with different challenges. You're faced with a different lens through which to look at things. You're privy to more information. And all of that causes you to reflect, causes you to question, and ultimately causes you to grow and stretch and learn. And as a principal of a high school, that's the most important thing that I can do as an adult as well, is be someone who learns, someone who knows that he can make mistakes and isn't above having the humility, which I think is something else that comes from my faith, to admit that when I need to admit it, and to then do what it takes to make that situation right. So, yes.
I know that the principal sets the stage for a building with the faculty and with the students, and I'm feeling very good that Maine South is in good hands.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Thank you.